Okay, guys. So what we're doing here is we're trying to develop the Headless Horseman into more of a three-dimensional character because I feel like in the original plot, he basically just drives the plot, and he's the inference of a campfire story. I would like to really flesh his character out and make him less unknown and spooky. So the reason most of the time the anti-hero or the villain, basically the feature creature in a horror story is so ambiguous is because there's nothing scarier than the unknown. The more clouded and dark and not unintelligible, but mysterious you make a creature, the creepier the story is going to be because people are like, okay, but why did that happen? And why is probably one of the most powerful and just horrible words of the English language because sometimes you get an answer and sometimes you don't. And when you don't, it haunts you. You're always like, okay, but why? And it drives you crazy. So I know when I was a kid, I would watch a scary movie against my father's will. He never liked it that I watched scary movies because he was like, you're going to have bad dreams. But anyway, so I watched my scary movie and then I'd be laying there awake, not able to fall asleep because it did scare me. And I'd be justifying basically how the scary creature behaved in the movie and cataloging it. So it's like, okay, well, everyone who died in that movie did X and X wrong. So if I don't do those things, then that creature is not going to come after me. And that's kind of how scary movies work is you've got some characters that do certain behaviors. Those behaviors bring doom impending upon them. And if you notice in a lot of horror movies, it's based off of our social norms and what we find to be acceptable. Back in the day, if you were sexually promiscuous, you were one of the first to die in a horror movie because promiscuity back in the day was not considered socially acceptable. Nowadays, it kind of doesn't matter, like flip a coin, um, because it's not considered socially taboo anymore. All right. That being said, I kind of want this to be more of an interesting retelling than a scary retelling. So I don't mind unmasking or unveiling a little bit more about the Headless Horseman to make him more of an intriguing character versus a scary character. Because I feel like the story is so common that I'm not like, I don't think I'm going to get very many scares out of this anyway. And I think that if we do it right, we can still keep it relatively creepy. But either way, because it's a retelling of a classic story, it's going to have that that atmosphere, no matter what we do to it. So I really want to make the Headless Horseman a more three-dimensional character that has clearer motivations as to why he does what he does. Um, so I think that's going to be our focus for this video. Hydrate. I don't usually talk this much when I'm writing, obviously, because it's all in my head. Okay, so what we know about the Headless Horseman was his head was lost in a battle and he wants his head back. And I'm guessing because he's stuck around that he's trapped on this mortal plane until he's reclaimed his head. And one of the reasons I'm really willing to lean into this is because a lot of the times, religiously, people like there are a lot of religions out there that believe that if you've been separated physically due to a sudden accident or whatever, you're incomplete and you can't move on. So he's incomplete and he can't move on, which I don't personally believe, but whatever. He's got his mission. He's trying. So either way, it works. Maybe it was the emotional. He felt like he lost the battle unjustly, so he's got unfinished business, so he can't move on. Versus the he's an incomplete or unwhole creature, so he can't move on. Either way, he's trapped here. unless this is just the way he wants to spend his afterlife, which I doubt. But we could change his motivation. We could figure out another way to make it to where he's trapped here. Like, oh, hey, like the Johnny Depp movie, because remember, it was the witch who took his head. And so he was trapped there because he was being controlled, not because he actually wanted to be there. So that's an interesting point, and somebody already did it. Okay, we'll keep that in the back of our head and think about it. And then I also I also wrote down here that he could be a guard of sorts and he's protecting a specific area. So basically what I'm thinking there is like the story, if you know Baba Yaga, she has 3 knights that she has assigned to specific areas, and they're tied to her and she controls them. And so they have to protect these areas and people can't get through without them obviously stopping them, except for the story of Vasilisa the Brave, Vasilia the Brave. I can never pronounce her name correctly. In which case she actually befriends the knights and circumvents Baba Yaga's control and thwarts the witch. I love Baba Yaga. So that's another story I'm actually writing on, but let's stay on point here. Maybe in a little bit, when I've made a little bit more progress on that story, I'll do a video on it and you guys can see where I'm at with it. But I really, really, really love Baba Yaga as a character. So I'm excited about that story. Okay. I kind of like this where he's a guard of sorts, but then we got to figure out what he's guarding. And you know, what his motivation to stay there is. And that could be related to the battle. Or maybe he didn't lose his head in a battle at all. And maybe he's not incomplete. Maybe he actually just has a pumpkin head and he's not really the headless horseman. But that might change our story too much. We have a lot of options here. So when I have a lot of options and I'm kind of stuck, the next thing to do is write your ending. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, but if you write your ending, you know where you're going. So, and this is an important note for academic papers as well. Whenever they always tell you to start with your introductions, you want your topic, you want your thesis, and then you write your 3 main points. You want to identify your topic, your thesis, your 3 main points. And instead of writing your introductory paragraph, the first thing you're going to do is write your conclusion, because then you know where to take your paper. And it's the same thing with a story. If you write your ending, you know where you're going. Then when you get there, if you decide you don't like it, you can always change it. But it's really important to have that like end goal and know where it is you're heading to. Otherwise, you're going to get lost along the way because it's a really windy and twisty road. Even if you've got an outline and you've got your plot figured out and you know everything that's happening, if you don't know where you're going to end up, you're lost. I mean, think of it this way. Would you ever leave your house without knowing why you're leaving your house? Like, are you just wandering? Or are you going to the store? You know where you're going to end up. Are you going out to eat? You know where you're going to end up, you know? Okay. So we got to figure out what we want our ending to be. I'm going to leave you guys here while I ponder this for a little bit, and I'll check you out in the next video.